Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. We go to the phones. Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak joining us here on the program. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
Doing great, Chad. Good morning.
Well, I guess we'll start off with the statewide news, and that is Dennis Bonnen, Texas House Speaker, is not going to seek re-election. What are your thoughts? What do you think moving forward on Dennis Bonnen and the Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bombshell in the sense that this is, if you think about where we were when the session ended in late May, I mean, it's unthinkable that we're in that position now. It became pretty clear last night when a wave of Republican state representatives called for him to resign that this was not this is an untenable situation. He had, I think, 5 of his committee chairs and several powerful committee chairs, calling him to resign. It kind of makes me wonder what happened at the retreat. He offered to resign then, apparently, and then the motion got pulled back. He obviously had one opportunity at the retreat this past week, Thursday, Friday, to try to, put this issue behind him, and he was unable to do that. And I guess the caucus put a statement out that made clear that they weren't pleased with what he said and his behavior, but didn't really call for him to resign. So they were kind of half pregnant when that caucus statement came out. That clearly wasn't enough for some members, and they were able to put enough pressure on him to cause him to resign. Look, here's what I think this is about. I mean, to a certain extent, this is about trust between members inside the body. But more broadly than that, what it's about this time is it's about whether he can lead as Speaker going into a really important election cycle. And I think that's going to be the next question. Can he even remain Speaker for the next, whatever it was, 13, 14 months? Yeah. Can he raise any money whatsoever? Can he help any incumbents whatsoever? That just feels to me like that's not really all that sustainable going forward.
So, okay, what would happen then? Because if he's not, let's just say he resigns early. Right now, Speaker Pro Tem is Joe Moody, Democrat out of El Paso. From what my understanding is that Bonnen can pick a new Speaker Pro Tem at any time if he wants to, but for an election to happen, they have to have a special session.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So I don't know whether you'd want to have a caretaker. It would seem to me you'd want to have an actual Speaker because you need to have someone who has the authority of the House who can, again, raise money and help incumbents and do all those important things, plus manage the interim charges that are occurring over the next 13, 14 months going into the next legislative session. There's not a lot of interest in a special session. The governor doesn't certainly want to call one, but maybe that's an important purpose. I think that's something that'll get ironed out probably over the next month or so. But, yeah, presumably he would change the Speaker Pro Tem from a Democrat to someone else. Could be a lieutenant, someone who's been close to him, someone he trusts, someone who's well liked. I mean, I think it'd be a nice gesture if he made one of the 10 people he singled out, perhaps the pro tem, just in a temporary capacity. But there's obviously a lot of competing power centers inside the House, and so he's that's a dicey prospect. But yeah, it's just amazing how this whole story is unfolded, and what a shocking turn of events this is. What a fall from grace, fall from power this is for Bonnen. It's really, really quite something.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think from Empower Texans from their angle on this? There have been some who said that going into this last session that they did not have a lot of power. Now with the audio recording coming out and everything else, there are going to be some who say, well, Empower Texans was able to take down a speaker. What influence do you think Empower Texans has moving forward when they may not be trusted in a lot of meetings moving forward with elected officials?
Yeah, it reminds me of the scene in the movie Traffic when Benicio del Toro's character meets with DEA agents in a swimming pool to make sure the meeting's not being recorded. That's a good question on Empower Texans. In this case, I don't necessarily know that this whole episode has increased their power. If anything, all it did was basically, essentially set a trap for Speaker Bonnen that he walked in and then that he made worse by covering up and lying about it. I do think they're going to obviously they have a big platform, a big megaphone. They have strong opinions about, conservative reforms. I think in a lot of ways their criticisms of the Texas House are valid. And so the big question is going to be, what does the new leadership team look like? Can they find a way to work with them? Can they find a way to be more conservative while still holding a majority? And then the other question is going to be how active is Empower Texans going to be on these primaries across the state over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, heading into the March primaries. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But I think as it relates to legislative session, it's going to depend a lot on who the new speaker is and what kind of relationship they have with that person.
Yeah, visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, let's take a focus on some of the national issues of the day. Big article from a couple of places that Democrats are thinking that this impeachment thing isn't going to go as quickly as they once thought it would. Is this good news for the president? Is this good news for Republicans that Democrats are figuring out this may not be a slam dunk quick process?
I don't know if it's necessarily good news. I think it depends, whether they can sustain the public's interest and whether they can move the public polling. It's one thing to get, initial support from the public for an inquiry. It's another to get their support for impeachment and removal from office. That's a much higher bar, and they're obviously not there yet. I think the bigger result of all this is that if they really are voting in December in the House, that means that you're going to have a 6 or 8 week trial in the Senate. It's going to occur January, February, when those candidates, want to be in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and Nevada. I mean, I think it's a disaster for Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar. Those folks that are need to be in Washington for those activities. Yeah. They're not going to be in a position to be campaigning. So look, I think this all goes back to what facts do they find? Can they run a more honest, open, and transparent process, which they've refused to do at this point? If you're a House member who's not on the Intel Committee, what do you know about these articles of impeachment? I mean, what data, what evidence, what information do you honestly have at this point? All we really have are transcripts of opening statements that several witnesses have released. Other than that, we have nothing from the Q&A that's occurring in these hearings. So, I think that the fact that it's taking longer than they thought is not what they wanted. They wanted to get this done by Thanksgiving. They know that there's limited legislative time the rest of the year, and it's going to be very hard to pass the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade deal while they're trying to impeach the president. So they're jeopardizing the end-of-year deadlines that are out there for Congress, and I think that's another factor here that's really important. Yeah,
very true. Visiting with Matt Mackowiak here on the program. Matt, before I let you go, I was able to listen to the David Plouffe interview with Hillary Clinton that everyone's talking about now, where she goes after Tulsi Gabbard and says Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset. Something else I pulled away from that interview, Matt. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it or not, but it just seems like, Hillary's going through there and Plouffe is going through, and they just don't seem very confident in their own field. They look at Trump and go, he's going to be hard to beat. And you don't hear that from a lot of Democrats, but it really does come across. I mean, do you think that, that's something that's not being discussed a lot, is that, it's not going to be that easy to beat an incumbent president, and one that still has a good economy going for him, and one that can redirect the media attention, with a tweet of the fingers.
Yeah, and I've not listened to that conversation yet. I've downloaded it as a podcast, so I'm hoping to listen to it soon. But I did see, obviously, the headlines are on the Tulsi Gabbard comments. Look, there is, I think, real doubt inside the sort of mainstream part of the party, the donor operative circles. They're not sure that they have a candidate that can win. Biden is kind of failing and flailing. Warren's too far left, can't explain how she'll pay for Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders was, had a heart attack 2 weeks ago, huge question mark. And everyone else is pretty unproven or doesn't have the resources. So I do wonder whether there's a space and time for someone like Hillary or someone like Michael Bloomberg to jump in, over the next 3 to 4 weeks, make a late, play at this. I think that is a question mark. I think the other factor is someone like Pete Buttigieg, who has significant resources, appears to be surging in Iowa. He's going to be ready and waiting if Biden continues to falter. And this is a crucial quarter for Biden. He's got to increase his fundraising and reduce his burn rate because he's in a really tough spot. Chad, last point, if you add not just the things you said about Trump's standing, but you also add the fact that he's raising massive amounts of money, building their voter lists and their data files beyond anything that's ever been done before, they're really going to have a pretty significant head start on the nominee whenever they have a nominee, and that's going to matter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, tell folks about your newsletter and also your podcast.
Yeah, the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the news from around the state, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email, and deliver it by 9 a.m. every weekday morning to more than 3,000 Texans. You can sign up for a free one-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify. Most two recent episodes, I talked to former U.S. Ambassador to Syria, Robert Ford, on Friday of last week about what's going on there. And then just this morning, we posted a new episode with Kim Strassel, the Wall Street Journal columnist and author of the new book, Resistance at All Costs. So you can check out those episodes.
Very nice. Matt, thanks for the time, and we'll visit with you next week.
Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.